Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the pod at Theory and Theology. I wanted to talk about kind of a fun movie. Another spoiler alert. This one's actually fun though. It's called You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah. You are so not invited to my bat mitzvah. It says it's number one in movies today on Netflix top 10. And it says BFFs Stacy and Lydia are both planning epic bat mitzvahs, but it all unravels when a popular boy in middle school drama threatened to ruin everything. Now, this movie has Adam Sandler, but the star of the movie is actually not really Adam Sandler. The main character is actually the young daughter. There's a middle-aged daughter, not middle-aged, but an older daughter, and then a mother. Um, so I think what were their names? Sadie and I don't I don't remember their names, but I think it's the actual Sandler family. Like it was all their last names were Sandler. So unless that's some kind of coincidence, like I don't really know much about Adam Sandler, like married, has kids, whatever. But I think all the three ladies, the mother, the two daughters, were all his family members. So that's kind of interesting to see. And so basically, the story is, there's this girl coming of age. Um, I guess she's about to turn 12 or 13 or so to have her bat mitzvah. She's in middle school. She has a group of friends that, they're not like the dorkiest of the geeky group, but they're kind of like a little too geeky for the popular kids to kind of not make fun of them. And the main character over time, the issue with this boy gets a little weird because she initially has trouble speaking to him because of her crush, and then, um, you know, um, I guess they go to Hebrew school together, and there's this weird cantor guy that he sings songs and plays guitar, and then the rabbi is a woman, and she's a little quirky and enthusiastic, but firm when she needs to be. And basically, you see this whole story where you know it's like a I would say it's maybe like a secular. I don't want to call them secular. Like I don't know. They're like a very modern Jewish family. I don't know. They don't state like uh what sect or denomination they are. I don't know if people say denomination when they're talking about Judaism, but they're proud to be Jewish, and it sounds like they go to temple, put their kids in Hebrew school, and are you know in a culture um with their culture. But it's not like the movie, like the series Stiesel, or any of those other movies like Unorthodox, where they're like super ultra strict. So it is kind of nice to see a movie where it's like this other side of Judaism, where it's like comedy and fun, and um kind of like quirky and like humorous, but um that's kind of the point. Adam Sandler's like comedy, so most of the stuff he's in isn't only serious. Like, but there's a lot of thinking points to it as well, which is what I like. Like it's not a very deep movie, but you can kind of take from it. Um, and the main character gets a little carried away with her anger and things like that, and to the point where she does do some things that aren't very nice. And then she's supposed to make her best friend's bat mitzvah entrance video. She ends up taking this her mom ends up going on her daughter's computer and sending that video um to her bestie's mom, and she like assumes it's ready and sends it. And that was a mistake because it was a video of, like, I guess she had all these embarrassing clips that her and her bestie had taken over the years, where they're like, there's stuff with farts and boogers and all kinds of stuff that you don't want. Like, you wouldn't want that, like, video footage out at like a formal event where it's like your coming of age event where you're in the spotlight, and it's like, oh, here's this compilation of embarrassing footage. And she did try to stop it. She did ask, hey, can the video be stopped or whatever, like after she realized, oh, this is the one that I made. She went to try to stop it, but for some reason they didn't stop the video. And so her bestie goes running out, and the main character has her own bat mitzvah, and then it's a whole thing of like, she does her haftarah portion, and it's kind of like up there, you know, uh, doing what she needs. She does the prayer and starts doing the portion, and um, but she gives a speech like in between that about being a woman, and or being an adult, and she's kind of just calling everything out, like how she and this bestie of hers had this issue with this boy, and how he's kind of a jerk, and how you know um the popular girls, how they're kind of jerks, and like she's kind of like mentioning that because she's now going to be an adult, she's like, I made some mistakes. And she was like, I want to go and like try to like apologize before I finish this ceremony. And they're like, no, 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 go finish the ceremony first. And then they let her kind of run off to go kind of try to make amends. Because the bat mitzvah party was going to be that night. And then she wanted her bestie, she basically had arranged to make it, I guess it was like the surprise ending. I'm just spoiling the whole thing, anyways, though. But yeah, she makes it the so that the bat mitzvah um is dedicated. The party's dedicated to the theme and the desires of her bestie. So her bestie shows up, and it's actually like a redo of her bat mitzvah entrance at the party because hers got messed up. And so, yeah, it was, during that time, a lot of their friends were having their bar and bat mitzvahs. And so they would go, and it sounds like a lot of them were going because they were all like in that same age range. Um, and so, um, based on what portion they had to read, like, I don't know if it goes by birthdays. I never understood um, how it's decided which portion a person reads. Um, because usually every week in Jewish culture, there's a portion of the Torah that gets read. So during the week, it's kind of broken up depending which Bible you look at. It can be kind of broken up. Um, for like, um, you know, I think her portion was like Kitisa or something like that. It has to do with like some sacrifices or something along those lines. And then I think, there's another guy on YouTube that I used to follow, Heshi Freed, and he's kind of like comedic about his religion. Jewish guy. It's called his channel was called From Satire, FRUMSATIRE. But he stopped recording quite a long time ago. But every so often I'll go back to watch his videos. He does kind of almost like a stand up style about like Jewish culture and kind of like makes people laugh. Like because he at that time he was actively a practicing Jew, so he was kind of like laughing at his own. He wasn't really you know and I learned a lot from it because I was studying Jewish culture, and I was like, oh cool, like the way that he would put in different words and stuff, like it was like Hebrew or Yiddish words, and I'd be like, oh, like what does that mean, like what's a stender, what's a bencher, what's a strimel, like what, like there's different words, and I was like, oh, like I it was kind of easier to kind of like remember them because he was putting it into like context. So that it was I found it pretty interesting. Like I wasn't trying to like laugh at Jews or anything. I was just kind of like curious about it, and like I could see why people would find it humorous. I like religious humor, but I know it is kind of sensitive. It's like, but I feel like when someone's actively doing comedy about their own culture, they want people to laugh. You know what I mean? They're trying to be humorous, and I don't feel like anything he was saying was like hurtful. He wasn't like laughing at people or anything like that. And he was part of a really religious group, and so I don't know. I feel like around the time when he was maybe gonna get married or engaged or something, that's about when he stopped recording. I don't think there was any goodbye or like this is my last recording. Um, but I think his website from satire.net, I think it was still up at least for a while. So I don't really know if he's still running that. But anyways, um, yeah, it was just kind of interesting. But yeah, like I kind of like, you know, um, it seems like there is a part of Jewish culture that gravitates toward comedy. I've noticed that about what I've learned about Navajo culture too. It sounds like they kind of gravitate towards comedy as well sometimes, like not like professional stand up necessarily, but it's like if you think of the amount of like professional stand up like Jewish comedians that there are quite a lot of them. Um and actors and things too, and it's just very interesting. Um I do think it is part of the culture. Um, and I know sometimes people can be really sensitive about things. Like usually the reason why something is funny is because it's somewhat like rude or offensive or like, a sensitive topic that somebody just like mentions, and that's part of a lot of times it's part of what makes somebody laugh. And so it's like, joking about periods or joking about, erections or joking about I'm not saying that the religious groups are all doing that, but I'm just saying like um they would joke about stuff. And so, yeah, this movie was interesting. Um, it, I found it funny or interesting how the main character said, that she's not an adult until, she actually understands that, like, she isn't supposed to put herself in front of her friends, and she needs to be more considerate of people and things like that. That's what makes her an adult. And then it was kind of interesting today. I was listening to Living L'Chaim. I was listening to one of the financial podcast episodes, and it was interesting to me that that episode, somewhere in there, the guy being interviewed was saying kind of the same thing, like somebody, he says like a bar mitzvah boy going up and with the squeaky voice saying like today I'm a man, and he's like no, like you're actually a man when you um I don't remember what he said actually. But he was just saying like there's certain responsibilities, you know, because he was talking about finances and like how people need to be responsible financially. um and in places like New York, that's really expensive to try to do. And you know, he's talking about like now more than ever people are going to need to have a method of kind of tracking their money, because even though in years before it was maybe easy to get into debt, and nowadays it's not that easy to just like roll up into debt and then have to like try to get yourself out of it. um like there were times before where it was like, okay, I can catch up, you know, but nowadays it's not so much like that. So um but yeah, like I found the movie to be funny. It was interesting. I don't tend to watch a lot of movies with like kids in them, like middle school age, high school age kids, or like uh not so much. Like so I kind of liked it. I liked it because I like Adam Sandler kind of, and because I like, you know, Jewish culture, so I kind of liked seeing that. And I guess maybe some things that I kind of saw about Jewish culture that was something that, you know, I wasn't, some of it I was surprised by, maybe some of it I wasn't. So, and I, you know, I think a lot of times we can stereotype, right? Like I know most of the, not most, but a lot of people I've heard who are Jewish, they're friends of mine, or who are, um, uh, like Jewish who are friends of mine, or who are, uh, you know, people I've seen like online talking about Judaism that are Jewish. Um, I've kind of noticed that, you know, a lot of times there is this uh sense of, you know, oh my gosh, it's like family togetherness, this sense of like tradition. So the part that's interesting is like when you see an aspect of religion, and then you kind of see like an aspect of like a non-religious life too. Now think I could be wrong, but um I think the middle school was a Jewish school. I don't know if it was a different school and then all the kids, like I don't know if it was like a religious school, um like a Jewish school. I got the impression it was a Jewish school, but it might have been a non-Jewish school, and then some of the kids went to Hebrew school. But I don't think that's what it was. I think it was actually a Jewish school where there happened to be non-Jewish students going there as well. And so that was one thing, was the like you don't see a lot of movies about Jewish schools. Um you do see movies kind of about like Hebrew school where people go, like not even a lot, but it's like, you know, they're not going to Hebrew school for like their main school. Like it's not a yeshiva. It's like basically a Hebrew school where it's like a school where students go. It's not like your day school. It's like an after school program or like a weekend program where the kids go to kind of learn about their religion and like practice their religion. Like the boys had yarmulkes on um when they were doing the Hebrew school. But they didn't wear yarmulkes all the time. But then you would see kids around the school wearing yarmulkes. So that's why I think maybe it was a Jewish school where they weren't always practicing the religion like directly, but they definitely had religious classes. And so, and traditions, like they had like a synagogue in the school. Um, and I just found it interesting. So I'm kind of, I like, because I went to a religious school from like third until 10th grade. And so, I was in it. And, you know, it mostly went by the religious traditions. Like we had chapel on Fridays. We had to wear chapel clothes on Friday, the whole day. Because Friday was the closest weekday to the Sabbath. I mean, we could have technically had chapel on Monday, but I mean, it kind of made sense. Chapel was on Friday, and then, like, you know, public schools aren't going to have chapel. You know what I mean? Even non-religious private schools, they're not going to have chapel. You know what I mean? It's like we had chapel uh, once a week. And it's kind of weird that it was called chapel because, like, uh, Adventist churches aren't really referred to as like chapels or anything. Everybody just calls it a church. Um, so I don't know why that name came up, but that's what we did in school on Fridays. We had to wear the Friday uniform, which was a little more dressed up. I mean, we wore uniforms. Um, I think I went the first and second year there before we had uniforms, and then from then on we started having uniforms. Um, and so usually our uniforms were like slacks or shorts, or like girls wore like a skirt or like a jumper at on chapel day. And if you were like in ninth or 10th grade, you didn't have to wear uniforms anymore, but you had to wear the dress code. So like you can wear like polo shirts with no pictures, or like button downs, or slacks. Cargo kind of khakis were popular back then. I used to have these like Union Bay short pants, and like I don't think we were allowed to wear shorts. Maybe we were, because with the uniform we were allowed to wear shorts, but it had to be like we couldn't wear jeans, we couldn't wear sweats, we couldn't wear like warm ups. It had to be like slacks type of material. Um, so, and back then, like Gap was popular and all that kind of stuff. So you could always find like Gap, Old Navy, like even skate clothes. You could wear Dickies, stuff like that. So like you could usually find something that you could wear within the dress code that wouldn't be a problem. Um, and then yeah, we had that dress code. Um we had I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I guess in this movie they didn't really have like a dress code necessarily. It didn't seem like. Um and if they did have a dress code, they didn't have like uniforms. Um and so it was kind of like a casual school, but it was like religious as well. Like it did have a religious aspect. Um, and my school, I think, would have been almost equivalent. Like, we just didn't have the happy go lucky kind of fun, because it's a comedy movie. So we had like a lot more serious people in the school. Like, our teachers weren't like happy singing and stuff, but we did have teachers that were like fun. Like, they liked art and music and nature and crafts, and extreme sports and stuff like that. Like we had a lot of teachers that were pretty wholesome. Uh, so we did. They kind of like would create activities surrounding kind of their interests, and so we were exposed to a lot of like. We went to Rock and Water. It was like white water rafting and like rock climbing. We went on a mission trip once a year, depending what grade you're in. Um, usually had a couple class trips a year. Um, it was a school. We did school stuff for kids. Um, and I would say it was religious, but it wasn't. Um, I don't know, it was religious, but it wasn't like um hard to kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like the rules were that strict. Like we had rules that like we weren't allowed to have electronics at school. Like this is back before people had like personal laptops and like cell phones and stuff. And so like nobody was going to be having like a cell phone or a smartphone anyways back then. And so we just didn't have them. I think they would tell us, you can't have a Discman, you can't have a Walkman. Um and I remember I used to play guitar, and sometimes I'd have this little mini amp that I kept in my locker. And once they were doing a locker search for some reason, I don't know if something came up missing, or maybe they were just, I feel like something came up missing, but I can't remember what. And maybe somebody's money, or people were saying that money was missing or something like that. And yeah, I think money came up missing and all kinds of stuff like that. And there were a couple of students that would be in the locker room stealing people's stuff. And I guess the teachers found out about it, and they're like, yeah, we've been getting complaints. And so they went and searched the lockers. Um, and, you know, I think that's why they were searching them. And they opened my locker because we had to go out of the classroom one at a time to open our lockers for the teacher. And then I opened my locker, and it was clean. And he commented, he was like, oh, like it's surprisingly clean, because I guess apparently a lot of people had dirty lockers. And my locker was pretty cleaned up. um some people's lockers had like food in them, and then there were bugs crawling out to other people's, or like they had just like paper shoved in there and stuff. Like mine was just books, and then I had like a little, I think it was two shelves. And so I think on one shelf I just had the little mini amp up there that you could just plug into a guitar. You can plug a guitar into it and like stick it on the side of your pocket. So I had that in there. It was like a little honey tone, uh Dan Electro, um really small amp. Like uh they have them smaller now, but it was for back then it was pretty small. And I had that, and I remember I just yeah, I used it. And the teacher was like, oh, like, what's is that, like a radio? And I'm like, no, it's an amp. And I kind of just like turned it on, like, is an amp, for my guitar. Like it wasn't a radio, because we weren't supposed to have radios. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, we weren't allowed to have electronics either, no video games, nothing like that. But I never thought much about the amp, because I used to play guitar at church, I used to play guitar at school. And for some reason I just kept that mini amp in there. Like I was at school every day of the week anyways. Like I would go almost every day of the week, and so I could always get in. um but yeah, um yeah, I don't really know. um with this movie, it wasn't that deep to me. It was just kind of interesting, kind of seeing a different culture from a comedic kind of like perspective. And not so serious, and not so much depth to it, but kind of like representative of Jewish culture, but in a fun kind of like modern way, where it's like I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who live this way. Like I feel like a lot of my friends who are Jewish, who went to like Hebrew school and stuff, they kind of talk about the way I kind of picture how their life was, at those schools. It seems like it would have been more similar to this. Like they have a lot of Jewish friends and a lot of Jewish social circle, and they're kind of involved at the temple and stuff, but they're not like going every single week, maybe, or they're not like doing all the prayers all the time every day. And like, they're not studying like Talmud, or, you know, deeply studying like religious texts like all day long and stuff. Like they're doing other stuff. They live they live a life where it's like they practice their traditions, learn about their religion, but then they're not spending every waking minute doing religious things. uh they're out doing other stuff, like they have interests, they go to parties, they go do stuff, they socialize with their friends, they go out to movies, they go do other stuff. They're not just like reading the Bible all day long and in groups where they're reading and praying all day long. Like they have other stuff that they're doing. So um it's kind of interesting to see because I feel like lately I've seen like most of the content I've seen about Judaism has been, from a very serious perspective. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be like that or whatever. Like, but I'm just saying, like, I've noticed a lot of the more popular stuff that's come out has been uh, about like ultra religious Jews. So it's kind of nice to see something kind of casual. Um, and if that is Adam Sandler's family, that is pretty cool to see that like they've got the family involved in the in acting and stuff too. That's kind of cool to see like an entire family. I think the last movie I saw Adam Sandler in was the one where Queen Latifah's his wife, and he's having like I think he's trying to find like a basketball player um, for the team because um, he's like a coach or assistant coach or manager of the team or something. And I think he's a scout, I guess, and he's supposed to be finding the talent. And there's like controversy, but yeah, it was a really interesting movie. Like, um, I felt like it had a lot of relatable aspects to it. It was approachable. It was kind of kid friendly. Um, it was a little mature, but not too mature. Like it's rated PG-13. I would say that's pretty accurate. But it's kind of cool to see. It's kind of funny. Where he's like goes to stores and sleeps. Like I remember my dad, when we used to go to like the mall, he used to take us to the mall and um he'd tell me and my brother, okay, meet me back at Sears. I'll be in the sections with the beds or the chairs or something, and like come back in like 2 hours or whatever. And we would go in the mall and just go like walk around, look around, and he'd be like in the recliners just like napping, and I'm like, seriously. Um and I guess in this in the banner for the trailer, it has him sleeping on like one of those day beds where people sit and like try on stuff, like a waiting area in a store. So there's him sleeping, there's the guy in the background sleeping, there's like two other men in the background that look like they're kind of dozing off possibly, and they're all like waiting for these women who are shopping. And like I remember when we used to go shopping as like a family, and it was like, oh my gosh, like it would take so long, and I used to hate that. But then also my parents would buy stuff, so I was like, cool, like I got some new clothes, So, um, but yeah, I don't know. There was kind of like there's like a weird nostalgia to it, even though I'm not Jewish. There's like a weird nostalgia about like when you're with all your friends. Like me and my friends, we all got baptized. I want to say near 12 or so. We all got baptized pretty young as a group. Um, it was the Westchester Church at this point in time, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's like a daycare or something. No, they turned it into apartments actually. So I don't even know how it looks anymore. But yeah, it's like a lot has really changed. And yeah, that property was always, it was a pretty big property. It had two tiers. um, with parking on like two or three different areas. Um, no, it had three tiers. It had three tiers. Wow. Um, yeah, because the sanctuary was on like the top level. Then you go down to another level, and there would be a little bit of parking, and then you go down to another level, and the kitchen would be down there, and there were just like classrooms along the sides. Um, and when they turned it into a a preschool, they had like play equipment all over the place too. So yeah, um, but yeah, I'm not like so involved with that church like that, but I've heard that a lot has changed. Um, like I was there when our church, after that church, we used to rent the school, the religious school that I went to. We used to rent out um the gym because that's where we had chapel. Like for Fridays, they would set up like carpets and all these chairs, and there was like a stage and everything. And then they would keep that up for Saturday, and then after Saturday, that would have to be broken down. Um, it would either get broken down Saturday or Sunday, but some of the year they would use the gym for Sunday sports league for um what was the Sunday for Sunday sports league for um basketball when it was basketball. Um, but yeah, usually the chairs and things were put away. Um, and those chairs lasted a really long time. And yeah, then we moved and we're sharing a Baptist church. And then there was another church in Redondo that got merged. And then a lot of those people moved. The conservative ones, the two conservative ones, they moved to, make, a more traditional service, um, to kind of add members to that more traditional service at another location across town, um, all in LA, but they just people don't really get along when it's like the music isn't their style. They don't like the technology. That definitely is a thing in the Adventist church that you see, and it sounds like, from what I've noticed, in Judaism, it sounds like that's kind of the same thing, where it's like there are the people who like it really old school, who want all these old traditions and want to do all these old things. And then there's the people who are kind of like, I like the updated stuff. I like that, things keep up with the times, and like okay, like we can show a YouTube video in church, or like, play like some kind of maybe modern instrumental music in the background, like when they're doing the offering, or when it's like greeting time and things like that, instead of just like old school, everything old and hymns, and like not even using PowerPoint, and like using the actual hymnal books. um but I don't know, uh I definitely used to like all that. Like I was kind of like it was just a cultural thing, like it was something I grew up doing and didn't really care to make it change, or anything, like, um especially because I didn't really know like so many other people, and I always like to have a pretty large social circle. So because I didn't know that many people, like I knew some but not that many outside of that religion, I was kind of like more interested in like just trying to make things work. But then the more I met other people, the more I was kind of like, okay, like I'd rather just spend more time hanging out with these people I like, and not so much time hanging out with these kind of church folk that are kind of closed minded. But it was a good experience overall. Like, when you're inside of a religion pretty deeply and you grew up in it, I was there since I was like 5 years old, so like I kind of saw a lot of the stuff, and I had access to a lot of, you know, you know, people who had bad tempers, people who lied about everything, people who just, had like drugs that they may have talked about or been on, or that kind of thing. So, um, and I met some people who were kind of like extremists. Um, there weren't a whole lot of those though, because there were other places they could go that were more like what they needed for themselves. So we didn't really have a whole lot of those extreme types kind of hanging around our environment because they needed something more strict for them. So they would usually go and fellowship with the people who were interested in living a lifestyle like that. So that was one good thing, is that they were able to divide out, by congregation, what people's preferences kind of are, for the type of service that suits them. And so, people could find what they liked and not be constantly arguing about things that they don't agree on, even though there were still the arguments about things. Usually it's like if somebody got sick enough of arguing, they could go either to a more conservative church or a less conservative church. But I don't know, like it I don't know. It could be a lot to deal with, but um, yeah, I think I've spoiled the movie. But I mean, I try to put the note in the notes and in the title that it's a spoiler, so that people aren't like accidentally listening to it, and then it's like, oh shoot, like you just told me the whole movie. But as you guys know, I like watching things and then kind of comparing and contrasting the stuff that I actually notice, like in real life or experiences that I've had. So it's not just like, okay, I'm gonna recap the movie, like okay, but I don't know though. Like I didn't know. Like I've heard about like bar and bat mitzvah parties, about like how they spend a lot of money, or how some cultures they can spend a lot of money. Um, and you know, it's kind of like the same with like quinceañeras. Like people can spend a lot of money, and now I've also seen people do it low budget, like at their house. So, quinceañeras and sweet 16s and all that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I, I kind of, I don't know. I thought it was cool. Like, I thought it was just like cool representation. Um, and yeah, like yeah, it was a good movie. Like, I was kind of looking for something like low key yesterday, and so I was kind of glad to come across that one. And but I don't really have much more to say about it. So with that, thanks for listening.